Cameras are an often overlooked aspect of our lives, yet they prove time and time again to be incredibly important. I mean, come on, we all carry one around in our pockets these days. Cameras are also, obviously, a very important component to film and always have been since the birth of the industry. So, with that, I present the history of the film camera. The year is 1889, and Thomas Edison is sitting at home thinking about what his next big thing will be after he invents the light bulb. Well, he decides he wants to make a camera where the picture actually moves. He brings on William Dickson to pretty much invent this camera for him, which would be called the kinetograph. It would be unveiled to the public in 1893 and would be used in tandem with the kinetoscope, a viewing device by Edison as well. This bundle of the kinetoscope and kinetograph would end up costing a whopping $250 USD to purchase, which is about $9,000 now. Of course, the device was revolutionary for its time, being able to display moving imagery at about 48 frames per second, but oh, it had a lot of faults. The camera could literally only be used with the kinetoscope, which was large and cumbersome, very impractical. Also, the capability of 48 frames per second, albeit smooth viewing, came with a large asterisk. It was not capable of long film. Needless to say, when two brothers came along 2 years later with a product that fixed most of these problems, suddenly there was competition in a new market. These fellas, called the Lumiere brothers, would unveil the cinematograph. Their device would downsize to 16 frames per second, allowing for significantly longer productions on film. 16 frames per second is kinda gross to look at these days, but come on, this is the late 19th century we're talking about here. At this point, you might be wondering, where do we go? I mean, the pictures are moving now. It's crazy. But what if they looked better? Well, in that same year, William Dickson returned to answer that question with the Biograph, which used larger film to make a more crisp and clean image quality compared to previous film cameras. By this point, the film industry now has options for film cameras, but each option is still missing one thing: color. That's why, after the turn of the century, Charles Urban helped to create the Kinemacolor camera from his previous experience working on a camera called the Bioscope, not to be confused with the Biograph we just looked at. The Kinemacolor camera used a red and green color filtering system to produce color on film, but it had one problem: it kinda sucked. It all comes down to the fact that red and green leaves out the B in RGB, so if you like shades of blue, too bad. Due to this, the Kinemacolor camera never really took off. Moving ahead some 30 years now, in 1937, Arnold and Richter made the first reflex motion camera, the Arriflex 35. What is a reflex camera, you may ask? Well, it's this. You're welcome. But what if you want your film to, how you say, kinda sorta not cost an arm and a leg? Well, look no farther than the Bolex H16. It used 16mm film, which was more affordable, and some people, who are way more important than me, like Steven Spielberg, were known to have used it. In fact, it's still commonly used today for budget classic filmmaking. Pretty nifty. Well, obviously I can't talk about camera history without talking about IMAX. Revealed at Expo 67 in Montreal and permanently installed in the Toronto Cinemasphere in 1971. What's that? You want your film to be wider? Well, that's like the whole point of IMAX. In fact, IMAX isn't even just a camera, it's a whole plethora of complicated stuff that all adds to a film's immersion. Well, that's all cool, but what if I don't want to hold my camera anymore? Well, that's where Steadicam 35 comes in. It isn't a camera itself, but a stabilizing system created by Garrett Brown for those hefty 35mm film cameras. Also, they used it in Rocky. Next, we gotta look at the Panavision Genesis from 2005. It sure as heck wasn't the first digital cinema camera. It was about 2 decades behind for that, but it was the first digital camera to use 35mm lenses, which finally bridged a long-standing gap between traditional 35mm film and digital cinema. Which brings us to now. And we're back to good old Arnold and Richter and their Arri. The Arri Alexa is the current standard for cinema, and for good reason. I mean, it's capable of producing a buttery smooth 120 frames per second at 4K resolution, despite most cinemas not even using either of those. But how much does a product like this cost? Oh, just a measly 50,000 euros, which is over 6 times more than the kinetoscope system would cost today. Pocket change, honestly. Oh, and that's just for the camera, by the way. Arri charges a premium licensing fee of almost 7,500 euros a year, or over 18,000 euros for a permanent license, just to use half of its already built-in features. Nice! Needless to say, camera tech has evolved a lot over the last couple centuries. Thank you.